Alright, in this video we're going to take a look at another way to factor things. And remember, factoring things just means we are trying to change expressions that have a lot of addition and subtraction involved into expressions that have more than one quantity that's multiplied together. Okay? And it's kind of hard to see that because there's a lot of stuff here to sift your way through. But we would like expressions to look this way, especially when we're solving equations. Okay, where we have this right here, this is one quantity. I don't know what it is because that's an unknown number, but it's still one quantity and is multiplied by another quantity. All right, now, I'm going to attach this to some information you already know. Okay, you've already practiced distributing things out in a process we call FOIL to expand a polynomial. And let me remind you of what that was. FOIL is when we took the first terms of each group, multiplied them to get x squared. We took the outside terms, which would be negative 7x, the inside terms, which is positive 2x, and the last term, which is negative 14. And then we simplified this up because we notice that these two things right here happen to be like terms, and so we get x squared minus 5x minus 14. Now, this is what we call an expanded polynomial. However, when it comes to solving equations, that's not a real useful thing to look at sometimes. So what we'd like to do is practice factoring it back into this form. We're just going to go the other direction. And so for lack of a better term, I just call this backwards FOIL. Okay, what we're going to try to figure out is what are two numbers, in this case it was positive 2 and negative 7, that when we multiply them together, we got this value. But when we added them together, we got that value. See, negative 7 times positive 2 gives me negative 14. Negative 7 plus positive 2 gives me negative 5. Okay, so we're going to look for that pattern, and we're going to try and work our way backwards. And after you practice a little bit, it really isn't all that terrible. So let's take a look at this one over here in orange. We're going to start by saying to ourselves, okay, here's our key number right there. What are all the different ways to get negative 10 by multiplying two numbers? Well, I could have 1 times negative 10. I could have negative 1 times positive 10. I could have 2 times negative 5. Or I could have negative 5. Sorry about that. Let me erase that. Or I could have negative 2 times positive 5. Those are really the only four options to get negative 10. Now I'm going to ask myself again, okay, out of all those options, which ones could I add together to get negative 3? Okay, will these two numbers add to get negative 3? Nope. Nope. Well, we're getting closer here. Which one of these combinations right here is going to give me negative 3 when I add it? That one? No, that'll give me positive 3. Okay, so it must be this one. That's what I'm left with. So let's try this and just see if we can look at the format. Okay, we're going to write this out just like we saw over here at the very beginning. X times x gives me x squared. And now I'm going to put in a negative 5 and a positive 2. And it doesn't really have to be in that order as long as the negatives and the positives are with the correct numbers. That is what we call the factored form. It has the same meaning. It would equal the same thing if we plugged in an x value as what we had in orange. Now, how do you know if you're correct? Sometimes you just have to try this out and see where it leads. So if I wanted to know for sure if I was correct, what I'd do is I would multiply it out. That's x squared. That's positive 2x. That's negative 5x. And then my last is negative 10. And when I put those together, I end up right there. So this is the correct factored form. Okay, now let's try it one more time with this purple example down here. Notice I have a negative and a positive there. And that just means you have to change your interpretation a little bit. Let's think about positive 35. What are all the ways to get positive 35? Well, 1 times 35 and 5 times 7. But don't forget, positives could come from a negative times a negative. So I could have negative 1 times negative 35 or negative 5 times negative 7. And now you look through those and say, okay, what's going to get me negative 12 when I add them together? Well, that's out of the question. That's out of the question. This would get me positive 12, so I'm left with that option. So I'm going to write x minus 5 and x minus 7. Okay? And this is the factored version of that polynomial right there.